Gary, cold open question of the week.
Yes, sir.
How can you tell you're getting stressed?
Ooh, that's a good question. Usually when I start to feel overwhelmed, then I'll know I'm starting to get stressed. Um, it's I haven't actually the last few weeks I haven't had any since I haven't been working at the school anymore. So I've been
Surprise, surprise.
free for like 3 weeks. It's been wonderful. But yeah, usually it's if I feel like I'm just getting overwhelmed, that's when I could feel like I'm getting stressed out.
Is it more mental or physical for you?
I think a little bit of both.
A little bit of both.
A little bit of
Okay.
both.
All right, well, let's start the show. Tonight on the Brian Lennon Show, it's the one about compassion fatigue with Christine DeGrazia. All right, and welcome into another episode of the Brian Lennon Show. I am Brian Lennon, and as always, joined by my co-host, Gary McDaniel. Say hello, Gary.
Forget your name?
I almost did. All right. Anyway, this week's episode, I'm excited about. It's kind of going along the lines of National Nurses Week, which begins on Saturday, May 6th, and goes through May 12th. We have on with us nurse and published author Christine DeGrazia. She is a registered nurse, and she has published a book recently. It's called The Self-Compassion Protocol, a guide for when you simply can't care anymore. And we're going to talk to her about her journey in nursing, especially over the last 3 years or so. So welcome, Christine. Nice to have you on.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Now, we spoke very, very briefly on the phone earlier, but I come kind of from like a family of nurses. My wife, Jill, is a nurse, and my sister is a nurse as well. And my aunt is also a nurse. So, and I've kind of been through nursing school twice with my aunt as well as with my wife. So I kind of, have a good knowledge, I think, of what nursing entails. And tell us a little bit kind of about what your book is about. And then we'll kind of dive into more of the specifics and your own kind of story and personal journey.
Sure. The book is about compassion fatigue, and it's something that really isn't talked about a whole bunch in nursing. A lot of healthcare workers experience it, but I don't think that they really know what they're experiencing. And unfortunately, it gets to a point that a lot of people wind up leaving the profession. And I had experienced it myself, and that's what prompted the book. Because I thought, you know what, I need to kind of get this out there, hopefully to help other people.
And you mentioned compassion fatigue, and I'm going to ask you to kind of define that. But I also kind of want to bring that up in relation to burnout, which has kind of become a common phrase thrown around, as well as depression. And kind of maybe if you could explain what compassion fatigue is and how it kind of differs from burnout and depression.
Okay. Obviously depression can be kind of a like a chemical imbalance. Burnout is when you take on too many tasks at work. Okay, you're just taking on 15 projects, you're going, and it happens over time. And we get burnt out and we're kind of like, okay, I'm kind of done. Compassion fatigue, where it differs, is it can come on quickly. It's kind of like, how can I explain it? It comes on quickly, and it's after experiencing like a lot of trauma. Okay, so, and it does expand past healthcare workers, which I don't think a lot of people realize. Anyone who really takes care of anyone else. So it can be first responders, it can be therapists, it can be social workers, it can be anyone who's dealing with people, that have any type of trauma or sadness, things like that. And it can happen quickly. And that's kind of how it happened to me. And you don't even realize it. You're just kind of like, and for me, when I experienced it, I knew I wasn't depressed. Like
Mhm.
I knew that that wasn't it, but I knew something was really, really wrong.
Right. And oh, what was I going to say?
And it
um,
and it happened to teachers.
I'm sorry.
And it happened to teachers. I kind
I
of
yeah.
feel like after you're explaining it all, I'm like, I go, you know, that kind of feels like what I kind of went through, because it was the whole, I am with all these young kids all the time, and then you're hearing all their stories and going through all that stuff, and then it's them just not caring. It's like, they're not being raised properly, I guess you could say, and it's just I kept saying I got burnt out from it, but maybe it's opposite. Maybe I wasn't getting burnt out. Maybe I just had the compassion fatigue, and I was just like, I just can't deal with it anymore. So
Yeah, well, you take on a lot of the things that you're hearing, you're seeing, and that you're dealing with.
yeah,
You take it on, and if you don't know how to process it, if you don't know, like what to do to work through that, it leads right up to the compassion fatigue, and then you just don't even want to care anymore.
yeah, okay,
Hmm.
now, now this kind of all started for you, and for a lot of people, obviously, with COVID. This is kind of the origin of everything. Um, at the When COVID started in, kind of on in America's shores here with really March 13th, 2020 is kind of the day. I think that was when the schools here in Northeast Pennsylvania closed down. At the time, I was working in a grocery store, so we were considered essential. My
Hmm.
wife was working, in the hospital at that time, so she was essential as well. Talk a little bit about kind of how COVID impacted you personally, and then I know also, um, your son is a doctor, and there was kind of you were also a mother as well, in addition to being a administrator, in a healthcare facility.
Well, you're right. I say till today, like COVID changed everything.
Hmm.
People are stressed. Obviously, you a lot of nurses in your family. When you're going through nursing school, you're stressed. You have all that.
Yep.
But COVID just brought it to a whole new level. And when COVID hit, I was in an administrative position, and there's a lot of stress that comes with those positions. Well, then you throw a pandemic on top of it, and now you got some crazy stress. And I will never forget, uh, when COVID, one of the first cases of COVID that hit this side of the country, was probably about 5 miles from the building that I was working in. And we were scared. I'm not afraid to admit it. We had no idea
Right.
what COVID was, what it was going to do, whether we were going to be dead in 2 weeks if we caught it. Nobody knew. And we have, patients we're trying to protect, and nurses were leaving. Like I had nurses get up and say, you know what, I'm done. Because they were so petrified of what was going to happen. And again, you have the stress of the job, you have the stress of being in an administrative position. You have patients that are, they're fine, and then they catch it. It was like just that. It was just a crazy, crazy time. And like you said, I have a son who's a doctor. So we would connect weekly and just kind of check in, like, how are things going? What's going on? How, what are the cases like down there? Um, and I'll never forget, he said to me, it was his turn to work in the COVID unit.
Mhm.
And, and I get a little emotional, and I apologize, but because it still affects me till today. And so he tells me, Mom, it's my turn in the COVID unit. And he worked at Johns Hopkins at the time, and they had it set up beautifully where the doctors could kind of assess the patients through a glass window. So he didn't even really have to go into the room. The nurses still did. And when he said to me that he was going into the rooms as well, I'm like, what are you doing? Like, they set it up for you to be, safe, and you're
Yeah.
going in. Like, what are you doing? And, he said to me, he said, Mom, he's like, what kind of a person would I be? Doctor would I be? He said, if I let the nurses go in and take that risk, and I didn't.
Right.
As I apologize, as a nurse, couldn't have been any more proud of him. As a mother, couldn't have been any more terrified.
Right.
And I got off that phone, and I don't think I've ever cried harder in my life. So the point of me saying that is that, you have your job that you're dealing with stress. We have personal lives that we're dealing with stress. So it's not just like, okay, well, you're, healthcare worker and you have COVID to deal with. We have stress at home. And, when all of that builds up, it affects you deeply, deeply. So you have the trauma of your residents dying. We did keep COVID out of the building for quite a while, but when it hit hard. We lost 15, 16 people within a month.
Mm.
And you get close to them in that setting. When you're in like a skilled facility, it's not like a hospital where they're in and out and in and out. You build relationships with them, so you're taking that home with you. And just a whole trauma of everything going on around you. It was like nothing I've ever experienced, and really
Yeah.
don't want to ever do it again.
Yeah. Now I know because I've been a manager before. So, and I've kind of learned my rule of management is you're only as good as your people.
Hmm.
So you're talking about, nurses kind of just walking out the door,
Hmm.
which, as a manager puts you in a bind, a tough position.
Hmm.
And then also being in a kind of a long-term facility, your population is basically the one that's at risk with this pandemic. So, it was like the jackpot you hit,
Hmm.
and then being in your role as a, administrator. So, I wanted to ask you about, you mentioned about nurses quitting, and I think in your book you had a statistic, or it's actually on the back of it says nearly 30% of nurses quit their jobs in 2021
Hmm.
following the COVID pandemic. And I was listening to another interview that you did, and I think you mentioned a statistic about 2025. It's going to be close to about half
Hmm.
of the current medical personnel plan to be out of
Yep.
the medical profession.
47% by
Yeah.
2025 are planning to be doing something else, and that's pretty scary.
Yeah, it is.
That's scary.
Big.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what I noticed too, and really it to me, again, it's just a very, if we can prevent it, if we can give healthcare workers, a way to cope with this instead of leaving, obviously that's what we want to, that's what we need to do. That's what we
Right.
need to do. And that's why I think the word has to get out there, and we have to say, you're not alone. You're not alone. You need to talk to people. You need to practice self-care. And I know, people say, oh, well, have a glass of wine and go to the spa. And not that I am opposed to that at all. However, that's not going to cure this, like this is a little bit deeper. You got to go deeper. You got to ask yourself some, serious questions, and figure out what you really want and how to process things. And you do have to take care of yourself. You have to do things for you. You have to make time.
Right. Now, how did you come about learning about compassion fatigue and kind of realizing, hey, that's what I have? like putting a
Well,
name to what you were feeling, and also some of the symptoms that you were experiencing, if you could tell, people about that as well.
oh, absolutely. So like I said, I was working in administration when it hit, and I continued to do that. Probably, I'm going to say November of 21, I got to the point that I'm like, you know what? I can like I felt it. Like I just felt I was becoming detached. Um, didn't really, now granted, none of us really want to go to work, but I really didn't want to go to work. Like I was just, I didn't, but I couldn't figure it out. And I thought, you know what, maybe administration, maybe I'm done with it. Like maybe I need to walk away for a little bit and go back to bedside nursing. Maybe I need a change. So I quit administration. I took a travel assignment and I did that for a little bit. I was only about an hour and a half away from where I live. So I would drive there and back. So I had like a 3-hour commute.
Mhm.
Went down and started doing it and realized, you know what, this isn't it either. And but I couldn't figure out what was wrong. So I would drive to work. And when I say I would cry the entire way, I cried. And I would cry the entire way home. And, again, I do get emotional and I apologize.
No,
But when I'm driving, tears, crying, and I would literally, I'd be driving the car and I'd be like, God, you gotta help me figure this out.
yeah,
Because I don't know what's wrong. But I knew I wasn't depressed, and I don't know how to really to say that. Like my life is great and I have a wonderful family. Like I knew that wasn't it was what I was dealing with on this side. And so I asked God, I'm like, you need to help me. And he did. I would come home, my days off, I would start researching and looking up symptoms, which it was fatigue. I was tired all the time. That feeling of just being detached, irritability. You have physical symptoms, headaches, you could have GI issues. So there's a lot of symptoms. That's just kind of scratching the surface. So I started looking all of these things up, and this compassion fatigue popped up, and I thought, oh my goodness, like, could this be it? Could this be what because everything started to click. And
yeah,
that's when I started researching that. And I'm like, I think I found my problem. And I wound up speaking to someone about it. She was very helpful and helped me work through that. And that's when I thought, you know what, I need to get this out there. And there are books on it, but there are a lot of psychologists and people like that, which is great. But I thought maybe if it came from, I hate to put it this way, but one of their own uh
right.
actually experienced it, they might I hate to say take it more serious, but realize that they're not alone. And it does
Right.
happen.
And I again, having lived with a nurse, for so many years, I think, you know, absent a pandemic, even, I think nurses experience this emotional fatigue.
Yes.
Um, you know, there is so much put on the shoulders of a nurse. Just a day to day, the schedule is crazy because they work 12-hour shifts instead of a normal 8-hour shift.
Mhm.
They work overnight, um, you're dealing with doctors, you're dealing with other nurses, you're dealing with patients, you're dealing with patients' families, you're dealing with administration.
Mhm.
There's a lot of hats that a nurse wears. So just a normal day to day thing, is stressful enough for a nurse. Um, and again, for you having worked your way through, 'cause again, I listened to your story on another interview. You started out as a nurse's aide and an LPN, went back to school, got your RN. So there's no question as far as your commitment to nursing. So it must have been hard for you to feel like almost, I don't want to nurse anymore.
Yeah. It was hard because of that, again, it's what I do. And I would, get to work when I was doing the travel, and I'd be sitting there getting a report going, I don't don't want to do this. Like, I just don't. And that's a terrible feeling when that's all you've done and you've put your heart and soul into it. And then to sit there, and the funny thing is I worked obviously with other, nurses, and looking back, I can see that that's what they were going through as well.
Right.
And and they would just say some really crazy things. You know what I mean? Because they just didn't care anymore.
Yeah. Now, for you, what was kind of where did you turn the corner as far as kind of getting over the fatigue or dealing with it and making a positive change?
Again, once I kind of figured out this may be what I'm dealing with, I did take some time off of work. I took a few months off, just to regroup, just to figure out what I had going on. Once I figured it out and I thought, well, there's got to be a way that I can get this out. The book kind of just fell in my lap. An opportunity presented itself, and I thought, you know what, this would be a great way, I think, to get it out there. And through the process of taking the time off, working on myself, writing the book, that is what kind of helped me through it. The book was my therapy, I think. And the fact that I get to help people in a different way. So I still get to be a nurse, I still get to help people, but I get to do it a little differently. And I absolutely love it.
Now, were you keeping like a journal during this time, or do you
Yes,
normally keep a journal?
absolutely. There's a couple things that I do. I keep a gratitude journal, and I journal. I don't know how else to say that. I journal.
Okay.
But I know it takes a little while to get into doing that. One thing I really believe in is that we need to be grateful every single day for every little thing that we have. And I heard this saying, and it brings it all into perspective for me. If you woke up tomorrow and the only things that you had were everything that you were grateful for today, what would you have left?
Mm.
And it makes you think, and it's like, wow. So then you start going and saying, "Ooh, I'm really thankful for everything. I'm thankful for my couch and because
Yeah.
that's, where I'm going. Like you have to be grateful for everything." So I started keeping a gratitude journal, and they say that before you go to bed at night, you need to sit down and write like 5 things you're grateful for. And I'll never forget, I started doing it. And I would write one, and I'm like, you know what, this is stupid. And I put it down, like, this is, and then the next night I would grab it again and do it. And, I don't even know why people do this. The more I kept doing it, the more it was like, hey, you know what, this is working. And now I have 3, 4, 5 pages that I write. And when you do that, when you're grateful for things in your life, like gratitude and, sadness or gratitude and any negative thought cannot exist in the same place. So
Right.
when you're grateful, you're automatically changing your mindset.
Yeah, I last year on my Substack page, I kept a gratitude journal every week, would post I think 3 things that I was grateful for that week. And it just kind of changes your mindset. You start looking for the positive instead of the negative. And then
Yes.
it just kind of snowballs and you're just finding the good in everything as opposed to maybe looking at the negative. So, I can definitely, vouch for that. And I've heard keeping a gratitude journal is very, it's positive mentally, psychologically for people.
Yeah, it definitely works. It just kind of, like I said, it just changes the way you think.
Now, part of the book here, which is it's the self-compassion protocol. And where can people find this? I know it's on Amazon.
Mhm.
They can order it through Amazon.
You can order it through Amazon. It's like the Kindle version and then the actual paperback.
The book.
The book, like the journaling.
Now you have kind of basically comes down to 4 questions or kind of 4 things you have to manage as far as like overcoming compassion. You want to talk a little bit about kind of those 4 points briefly, just to kind of give, listeners, if they're going to read the book, what they're going to kind of learn and experience.
Absolutely. And again, it's more than just doing that spa day, and you have to ask yourself some really serious questions and figure out why you're doing what you do. Nurses are usually tend to be people pleasers. Okay. So you have to, when you're feeling that just despair, you got to ask yourself why. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Why am I putting everyone else ahead of me? Why? And there are questions in the book, but it's any why question as to why you're doing what you're doing. Okay, what am I trying to prove? Why do I feel like, I have to take on everything? Like it's digging down deep and realizing that you don't have to. It's okay to set boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
need boundaries. Okay. And it's hard to do, especially for people pleasers, to say, and I'm going to tell you, the administration contributes to this problem unintentionally. But we have such a shortage now of nurses that they're offering, crazy money to have shifts covered and have people come in and work extra. And people like to make money, so they're picking up these shifts and but they're burning themselves out. And we have to learn to say no. We have to learn to say, you know what? No, I'm more important than that shift, or I'm more important than, that bonus, because you are. And we can't not put ourselves first. We have to be first. If I was to ask anyone who was the most important person in your life, I would hope everyone would answer yourself, because you are, and we need to take care of ourselves. And again, it's asking these questions, it's figuring out why you're doing what you're doing, and then it's realizing that you have to put yourself first. With family, with friends, with work, no one is going to stop loving you or liking you or working with you if you have a boundary set. It just teaches people what you're willing to put up. I hate to say put up with, but what you're willing to take, or
Yeah.
how you want to be treated. Let me put it that way.
And I don't know if you mentioned it in the book, but I know you did mention it in one of the other interviews I heard. You talk about you had 7 weeks of vacation.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, not even, nurses, obviously, but even I can even speak for myself. Previous positions I had, I would have all this vacation, but I felt like I couldn't use it. Or, if I did use it, can I trust, my assistant manager to run the store right, so that when I come back from vacation, the district manager is not breathing down my neck.
Right.
Talk a
Exactly.
little bit about like using your vacation. And then you also mentioned too, like as an administrator, maybe what are you doing, I guess, as an administrator to kind of promote healthy use of, your vacation time and personal time?
Yeah. For some reason, people seem to think that you're a hero, or you're a what, I don't even know what you want to call it, when you don't use your vacation time. Like there's no medal, and I've said this before, there's no medal for not using it, because if there was, I would be the Michael Phelps of unused vacation time. Okay, like no joke. And that, like I said, when I left administration, I had 7 weeks of unused
Yeah.
vacation. Like that's crazy. Why? Nobody's, your boss isn't looking at you any better. Like you're just a person who didn't use that time for yourself, is all that. And you work hard for it, so you need to use it. And that saying where, if something happened to you today, your job would be posted tomorrow and replaced in a week. And that is the truth. Like that is
Yes.
so the truth. So that's another reason why we need to put ourselves and our families first. We have to use that time, even if you're taking it just to what are they called, the staycation, and
Hmm.
just be at your house and be in your. And I've done it. I've done it, and I'm in a lounge chair in my backyard, and I'm like just happy as a clam in sand. But I'm relaxing, and I'm taking that time for myself and using it to recharge. And we really need to do it. Um, for me, at work, I like to try and make work as, and sometimes it's not that easy, but as stress-free as possible. Okay. So I like to make it fun. I like people. I'm not that type of person who, well, you can't have conversation and you can't, you can't laugh and you can't, if people are laughing, that's relieving stress. So it's
Right.
okay. You know what I mean? Like it's okay to talk by the water cooler, as they say, share a funny story, do what, it needs to be, it needs to be somewhat relaxed. I just had a program where I work. This place came in and put on a whole, um, like kind of workshopy thing about burnout and, teaching people how to relax. I'm having an escape room come in a couple weeks for everybody to come. You're still learning, work involved, but it's a fun way to do it,
Right.
and just trying to tell people you appreciate them. It goes a long way. So, there's different things that you can do.
Yeah. And I think this, I think your book and just the topic itself, if, healthcare facilities introduce it to nurses. I know you spoke at the college where my wife teaches.
Mhm.
And so you spoke to, soon to be professional nurses. And I think that was, great to kind of give them an awareness and, hey, be on the lookout for this,
Right.
because it's going to happen, especially with the state of nursing as it is, with so many leaving
Mhm.
the field and not being able to create enough nurses, to meet the demand.
Right.
Those call-in shifts are going to be, the call will be made, can you
That's
come in?
right. That's right. And you gotta say, it's okay to do it, but you gotta know when to take care of you. And that's what's really important.
And talk a little bit about the writing, like the writing and I guess editing process of the, because one of my life's dreams is to, publish a book. How was that, experience for you with writing and editing and seeing your work published?
I am gonna tell you, if you ever have, like, if like you said, that's your thought, you need to do it. You need to do it because it is the most amazing experience. And I always said I wanted to write a book, wanted to write a book. And that's why I said when this opportunity presented itself, I was kind of like, you know what, we're gonna give this a shot.
Hmm.
And again, I'm a nurse. I'm not a writer. I'm not a speaker. I'm a nurse. But I gave it a shot. And I'm working on my second one, if that
Oh,
gives you
you're good.
yeah, because it was just like you sit down and you just start, it just flows, especially when it's something that you're passionate about, when, it's something you're not, like, this is a true story, and it was flowing and it was great. And then you send it to, I think the editor is like the greatest thing because, I might say it one way and you send it to the editor and it comes back all pretty.
Mhm.
So instead of me saying like, hey, but it comes back with a whole different, so the editing was a wonderful experience as well. And the whole experience was great. And then when you see that book and your name is on it
Right.
and you see it on Amazon, I can look myself up on Amazon, like you're sitting there going like, wow, like, oh my God, so it's been amazing. It
Yep.
really
And the name of the book is The Self-Compassion Protocol.
has. Hmm.
Christine DeGrazia, RN, is the author. Now you've kind of brought this book out into the world now, and you're sharing it with. I think you were at some local universities, and I guess you plan on bringing it into other, medical facilities, hospitals. Talk a little bit about, that and kind of where you want to take things going forward.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're correct. And I have had a couple engagements at colleges, obviously, at your wife's. I've been at Penn State, CTC, like I'm kind of, working on that, which is great because like you said, I'm giving them things to look out for, uh, to be prepared for. And compassion fatigue, I experienced it through COVID, but it doesn't, like you said before, it doesn't necessarily have to come that way. Just being a nurse working in an ER, again, first responder,
Right.
it affects everyone. So I'm wanting to take this farther, wanting to go to hospitals and, just kind of broaden the horizon there. I want to offer, I'm going to be offering workshops on how to manage burnout and stress in general. Obviously, educate on it, but then give tips on how to control it, how to manage it, and hopefully how to not get caught up in it. So that's going to be coming out very shortly, and I'm kind of excited about that. I'm revamping my website already because it's kind of expanding past just the book. So again, I want to just offer these things and get out there. And again, I'm a nurse, and I just want to help other nurses get through this and to stay doing what they love. So
Right.
I'm excited.
Now, the book you're writing now currently, is that going to be kind of a continuation of the compassion fatigue, or is it another topic?
It's another, well, it's not a continuation of the compassion fatigue, but what the second book is about is just about um, giving yourself permission to make decisions in your life to get to where you want to be. I think that so many of us kind of get wrapped up in what the right thing to do is. As far as, like when we're growing up, it's marriage and children and a job and, all of that. And I think a lot of times we forget about ourselves when we're doing that. We kind of get wrapped up in just daily life and again, being there for everybody else.
Hmm.
And this book is just like recognizing, like, you know what? You can have your own identity and you can have things for yourself. You have to have the courage to do it. You got to get through the fear and make the decisions that are going to get you to where you want to be. And again, it kind of goes to that people pleasing thing. So maybe they are connected a little. But getting over that and realizing that you can have a life of your own and whatever it is, like if you want to be married, have the white picket fence and the kids, then that's what you should have. If you want to own your own business or you want to whatever, that's what you should have. And you should be working towards that. I'm a huge believer in, again, we only kind of go around on this planet one time.
Right.
And I was watching TikTok. Yeah, I do that. And, and there was one on there with Eddie Murphy, and it totally blew me away. Like, I think I sat there for 5 minutes afterwards going, wow, wait a minute. And he's just walking and he's going 75 years. 75 years. That's the average lifespan. He said, so that's 75 springs, 75 summers, 75 winters, and 75 autumns. That's all you've got. And what are you going to do with them? Now, when I did the math, that only left me with about 19 left. And no, nobody else do the math, please. But it kind of hit. It was like, wow, like that's not a lot. It's
No.
not a lot of time. And to waste that time doing things that we really, I don't want to say don't want to do, but it's not what we really want to do or our purpose on this planet. It's, to me, it's So that's what the book, it's just kind of helping people decide and realize that we do only go around once, and we need to make the most of it and really do what we want to do.
Well, that sounds like another interesting book and very inspiring. It's going to be inspiring to read. Tell listeners about your website. It's ChristineDeGrazia.com, and I'm going to have all the information and links on the show notes as well, so people can check that out. But if people go to your website, tell them what they'll find, including a little kind of survey regarding compassion fatigue.
Absolutely. And like I said, I'm kind of in the process of redoing it, so it's going to be much bigger than what it currently is. Right now, if you go there is a link to get, I believe, the first chapter of the book for free. There is a link to take a quiz to kind of see where you are in your burnout, if you're experiencing it. There's just a couple quick questions on there. You can go on and on with the questions for it, but again, just a quick little survey to kind of see where you are. And obviously there's information there to contact me. What it's going to have, I'll have a blog on there. I'm actually going to be starting my own podcast.
Oh,
Yeah, with the launch of the next book. My speaking thing that I do, I will be offering that, and the workshop. So it's going to have like a little section for everything, a little bit about myself. And then obviously, ways to get in touch with me for whatever one of those services that I could provide.
very good. And also, reading the book too, if anyone's interested in talking to you or communicating with you directly, there's information in the book as well for that, for any caregivers who might be interested in that.
Mm-hmm.
Are you interested in, you mentioned you did a lot of research kind of into compassion fatigue. Is kind of furthering your education something you're interested in doing as well, or is that on the...
You know what? I am constantly, every day we need to learn something every day. We can never stop learning. Okay. And so I am constantly taking classes. I'm constantly doing something. I became a certified life coach. I'm always, always, always doing master classes, anything that I can do to get. So am I going to technically go back to college and, like get another degree? I'm not sure yet, but I am constantly doing something, learning something every day. Every day.
Very, very good. That's why I like having a podcast, because I get to speak, talk to people and learn, about people and learn things. So definitely understand that. Are you ready for some news of the weird?
Absolutely.
All right, so it may be a little loud. Storm just blew in. That's why I disappeared for a couple minutes there.
Oh, okay.
My thing for my pool, the solar cover that holds it, blew into the pool, so I had to go running out there and grab that. So,
All right.
but yeah, we could do a little news of weird.
And now it's time for news of the weird with your host, Gary McDaniel.
Put these back on so I can see.
All right, the glasses are back on, so let's go to the newsroom with Gary.
All right. So first story: Little Hero boy stops Michigan school bus with ill driver. Oh, this is really loud and obnoxious, isn't it? All right, I'll get through it quick. All right, a boy grabbed the steering wheel on a school bus. Oh my goodness! Let me grab this. School bus had hit the brakes during bringing the vehicle to a safe stop on a busy Detroit road after the driver had passed out. Someone called 911. The seventh grader Dylan Reeves shouted to dozens of other middle schoolers. Dylan was hailed as a hero. He stopped the bus as it was veering toward oncoming traffic. In my 35 plus years of education, this was an extraordinary act of courage and maturity on his part. The incident was recorded on video camera just above the driver. We got a little hero driver,
And the kid was in 7th grade?
7th grade.
Wow.
Yep. All right, and our last story is Patch crowned beautiful bulldog at Drake University event. Patch, sporting a jean jacket as she strutted down the runway, was crowned the winner of Drake University Beautiful Bulldog Contest. The 2-year-old English bulldog beat out 28 other contestants from 6 states Monday night to win the top prize. The bulldog is Drake's mascot, and the contest kicks off the Drake Relays track and field competition happening later this week. Patch's entry seemed to get a boost when she carefully ambled through a hoop on the runway, bringing cheers from a crowd of spectators. I heard about the contest when I moved to Des Moines this past summer, and I knew I had to enter Patch, Hinton said. She is the epitome of bulldog breed, and we're so proud of her all the time, but especially today. And I will show you a little picture of Patch, the bulldog, who won Beautiful Bulldog. Let's see, share screen, and there is Patch.
Oh.
Beautiful.
Now,
bulldog.
Christine, do you have a dog?
I do. I have a Shih Tzu.
Okay.
I do. And his name is Ben. Yep, his name is Ben.
I have
Ben the Shih
I have
Tzu.
a hound named Hickory. She's,
Nice.
I don't know, 14, 15 years old now, I think.
It's getting up there.
My little old lady. So, but yeah.
I have 4
That's it.
kids.
News of the
so-
weird.
News of the weird. All right. So before we wrap up here, would just like to wish all the nurses a happy National Nurses Week this coming week, May 6th through May 12th. And happy National Nurses Week and Day to you, Christine.
Thank you.
And I guess maybe we'll just end with kind of a, if you had like one message to tell, nurses, caregivers, anyone kind of working who may think they're experiencing compassion fatigue, compassion depletion, what would be your kind of words of wisdom to them and your guidance to them?
Well, the first thing I would say is, most certainly don't feel like you're alone out there, because you're not. And don't feel like it's something that you have to be ashamed of, because it doesn't mean that you're weak. It doesn't mean, it just means you're human. And reach out and talk to someone. And the other thing I like to say is, if you see someone, a colleague that you feel is suffering from it, it may not be you yourself, but maybe you see someone that's struggling, reach out to them. Even if it's just to give them a hug, or just to say, hey, you know what, I'm here. If you need to talk, if you need anything, like sometimes just knowing that somebody is there is a tremendous help.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
I
can't
think,
help others unless we help ourselves.
yeah, I think what your book really is going to do is raise awareness for people who are caregivers. I know, just talking with my wife who heard you speak, and she was kind of reflecting on her experience with COVID and in the hospital. She was like, we never talked about it. So I think kind of raising this awareness and making it okay to talk to people and tell people how you feel, or like you said, if you recognize it in a colleague, to approach them about it and feel comfortable doing that.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Like I said,
so-
there's nothing wrong with it.
right. Yeah. I think nurses by their nature are very, think of themselves as think of themselves last.
Right.
And, unfortunately it, takes people to a lot of point where, like you were feeling, the physical, mental ailments of leading that kind of lifestyle. So, yeah. So thank you for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having
Christine
me.
DeGrazia, RN. The name of the book is The Self-Compassion Protocol. It's available on Amazon. It's also available through your website, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the website is ChristineDeGrazia.com. And, there's resources on there. Obviously, it seems like there's going to be a lot more as well coming in the future. So continued good luck with that, with your podcast and
Thank you.
the new book. Looking forward to that. And that'll be all for us tonight.
All right. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks again to Christine DeGrazia, our guest tonight, my co-host and producer extraordinaire, Gary McDaniel. I'm Brian Lennon, and have a good night.
Peace
And
out.
happy National Nurses Week.
Yes.